It was a quiet May morning in Ouagadougou in 2025 when Ibrahim Traoré received a call that would profoundly change his perspective on leadership and legacy. On the other end of the line was Michelle Obama, calling from the Obama Foundation in Chicago. President Traoré, Barack would like to participate in a special program with you on the new generation of African leadership, she said warmly. Ibrahim paused, surprised by the honor of the invitation. At 35, he had grown accustomed to international recognition, but being invited by the first Black American president held special significance. Mrs. Obama, it would be a great honor, he replied respectfully. Barack has followed your work in Burkina Faso with great admiration, Michelle continued. He sees in you the kind of leadership that Africa needs. Young, visionary, people-focused. The program would be broadcast on CNN, with Anderson Cooper moderating a conversation on the legacy and future of African leadership. Barack Obama rarely participated in joint interviews, making the invitation all the more special. In Chicago, Barack Obama was carefully preparing for the meeting. Michelle, this young man reminds me of why I got into politics, he said, studying reports on the transformations in Burkina Faso. He's doing exactly what I hope to see, authentic leadership that transforms lives. Are you going to talk about your father? Michelle asked, knowing that Barack rarely discussed his personal African heritage publicly. Yes, Barack replied thoughtfully. Ibrahim deserves to know how his example impacts not just Africa, but Africans in the diaspora, including former American presidents. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday. Two leaders, separated by generation and geography, but united by a vision of a prosperous and dignified Africa. In the days leading up to the program, Ibrahim Traoré had been deep in thought about the significance of this meeting. In his presidential office, surrounded by books on African and American history, he prepared himself not only intellectually, but emotionally. Dr. Ouedraogo, he told his foreign minister, this is not just a TV program. This is a historic moment. The first time a former Black American president has publicly recognized contemporary African leadership in this way. Dr. Alphonse Ouedraogo nodded understandingly. President Obama represents a bridge between Africa and the diaspora. Your recognition legitimizes our vision of modern Africa in the eyes of the world. Ibrahim had been studying Obama's historical speeches, especially his 2009 visit to Ghana, when he spoke of Africa not needing strong men, but strong institutions. He planted the seeds of ideas that we are reaping today, Ibrahim reflected. His wife, Ajara, noted Ibrahim's growing emotionality. You're more nervous than you are about any other international event, she observed over dinner. This is different, Ibrahim explained. Obama carries a unique symbolic weight. For an African child who grew up watching a Black president lead America, he proved that impossible dreams can come true. In Chicago, Barack Obama was undergoing similar preparation. Anderson, he said during a pre-program briefing, I want this to be a genuine conversation, not a political interview. Ibrahim represents the future I've dreamed of for Africa. Obama had specifically asked to include a moment about his personal African heritage, something he planned as an emotional surprise for Ibrahim. This young man deserves to know the impact he's having, Obama told his staff, not just in Burkina Faso, but on all of us who carry Africa in our hearts. Global anticipation was growing. International media were reporting it as a historic meeting between established and emerging African leaders. The evening of May 25, 2025, arrived with unprecedented global anticipation. At CNN's Atlanta studios, the atmosphere was charged with historic emotion. Barack Obama, dressed in a navy blue suit, waited to connect with Ibrahim Traoré in Ouagadougou. Good evening, world, Anderson Cooper began. Tonight, we have an extraordinary conversation between the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, and President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso about leadership, legacy, and the future of Africa. The screen split to show Obama in the familiar CNN studio and Ibrahim in his presidential office, with the Burkinabe flag and a photo of Thomas Sankara in the background. "President Obama," Anderson began, "you specifically requested this meeting. Why?" Obama smiled warmly, looking directly at Ibrahim on the screen. "Anderson, for decades, I have hoped to see the kind of leadership that Ibrahim represents emerge in Africa. Young, educated, focused on delivering real results for his people." "President Traoré," Obama continued, "first let me say how deeply proud I am of what you have achieved. Reducing poverty by 34%, building universal health care, transforming education, that is real leadership." Ibrahim was visibly moved. "President Obama, your words mean a lot coming from someone who inspired an entire generation of young Africans to dream big. When you were elected in 2008, Ibrahim said, his voice shaking slightly, I was 18 years old, watching from Burkina Faso. You showed me that leadership has no color or geography. It has character." Obama nodded deeply. "Ibrahim, you understand something that took me years to learn. Leadership is not about you. It's about the people you serve. And you clearly serve your people with exceptional dedication." Anderson watched in fascination as the genuine connection formed between the two leaders. "President Obama, how do you see Ibrahim's role in modern Africa?" "He represents the best of Africa," Obama replied. "Not asking for help, but building solutions. Not blaming the past, but creating the future." Obama decided to share something deeply personal that he had prepared specifically for this moment. "Ibrahim, can I tell you something I've never said publicly before?" he asked, his voice taking on a more intimate tone. Ibrahim leaned forward, clearly touched by the confidence. "Of course, President Obama. My father was from Kenya, as you know, but throughout my presidency, I have struggled with the question of how to honor African heritage without appearing to favor one continent over another," Obama said, his voice thick with emotion. "Watching you work, seeing how you lead with dignity and competence, makes me proud of African leadership in a way that I could never express publicly as president." Ibrahim felt tears welling up in his eyes. "President Obama, let me finish," Obama said gently. "For 8 years, I have carried the burden of representing not just America, but the hopes of black people worldwide. It was isolating at times. But you, Ibrahim, you show me that I was not alone in this journey, that leadership committed to justice and dignity exists everywhere that courageous people choose to serve." Anderson Cooper was clearly moved by Obama's raw honesty. "President Obama, this is extraordinarily personal." "It is," Obama agreed, "because Ibrahim deserves to know that his work resonates far beyond Burkina Faso. It helps me understand my own legacy more deeply." Ibrahim could no longer hold back the tears. "President Obama, I never imagined that my work could have this kind of impact." "Ibrahim," Obama said, his own voice cracking slightly, "you are building the Africa that I dreamed of. When I visited Ghana in 2009, you are proving that Africa does not need saving. It needs to be led by Africans like you. And that fills me with hope not just for Africa, but for the entire world." The studio fell into an emotional silence. Ibrahim Traoré could no longer contain his emotion. Tears rolled freely down his face as Obama continued with statements that touched his soul deeply. "President Obama," Ibrahim said, his voice breaking, "your words, they mean more than I can express." Obama, seeing Ibrahim's genuine emotion, decided to deepen his message even further. "Ibrahim, do you know what the most powerful thing you've done is? You've proven that Africa can lead by example, not by rhetoric. When rich countries talk about universal healthcare but can't implement it, you implement it. When they talk about inclusive education but struggle with inequality, you reduce inequality. Ibrahim wiped his eyes, trying to compose himself. President, I grew up hearing that Africa would always be behind, always need foreign aid, and you've proven that to be a lie, Obama interrupted firmly. You and your generation of African leaders are rewriting the narrative about what the continent can offer the world. Anderson Cooper gently interjected, President Traoré, how does it feel to hear that from President Obama? Ibrahim took a deep breath, still visibly emotional. Anderson, it's validation of everything we've fought for. When President Obama says we're on the right track, it means maybe we can really transform Africa. Not maybe. Obama corrected, you are transforming Africa and inspiring the entire world in the process. Ibrahim, I want you to know that when I feel pessimistic about global politics, I read about your work and remember why change is worth fighting for. Ibrahim was openly weeping now. President Obama, thank you for seeing me, for seeing our Africa. Thank you for giving me hope, Obama replied, his own voice choked with emotion, for showing that authentic leadership still exists. The moment was so genuine and powerful that even Anderson Cooper was visibly moved. Obama, seeing how deeply his words had touched Ibrahim, decided to share something even more intimate. Ibrahim, can I tell you about a moment that changed my perspective on Africa? He asked, his voice soft but charged with meaning. Ibrahim, still wiping away tears, nodded, Please, President. In 2018, 3 years after leaving office, I visited my grandmother in Kenya. She was very ill, and I knew it would probably be the last time I would see her, Obama began. She took my hand and said something I have never forgotten. Barack, you honored our family by bringing Africa into your heart in the White House. Now I hope to see young Africans honoring the continent by leading at home. Ibrahim held his breath, understanding the weight of those words. When she died a few months later, Obama continued, I thought a lot about what she said, and then I started following your work, Ibrahim. Watching you implement reforms that I dreamed of seeing in Africa, watching you represent the continent with dignity in world forums, I knew my grandmother's prayer was being answered. Ibrahim couldn't stop crying. President Obama, your grandmother, she would be proud of you for recognizing that. She would be proud of you, Obama corrected firmly, for being the kind of African leader she dreamed of seeing, young, educated, committed to her people. Anderson Cooper was clearly touched by the intimacy of the moment. President Obama, this personal connection to African heritage has rarely been seen publicly. Because it had to be the right moment with the right person, Obama replied. Ibrahim represents the best of Africa, not an Africa that needs pity, but an Africa that deserves respect, and deserves to have its leaders recognized not as curiosities or exceptions, but as examples of what effective leadership really looks like. Ibrahim finally managed to speak through his tears. President Obama, thank you for helping me understand that our work matters beyond our borders. Anderson Cooper, sensing the emotional depth of the moment, decided to explore the broader connection between the two leaders. Presidents, you represent different generations of leadership. How do you see your shared legacy? Obama looked directly at Ibrahim on the screen. Anderson, what Ibrahim taught me is that legacy is not about what you build for yourself. It's about the foundations you lay for others to build on. When I was president, I faced limitations, partisan politics, global expectations, the burden of being first. Ibrahim doesn't have those limitations in the same way. Ibrahim shook his head, still emotional. But President Obama, you opened doors that allowed my generation to dream. Without your example, I might Never have believed that young people can lead with dignity on the world stage. That's exactly the point, Obama said, smiling. Each generation builds on the one before. You are building the Africa that I dreamed of, but could not create. And the next generation of African leaders will build on the foundations that you are laying now. Ibrahim wiped his eyes again. That's a huge responsibility, but you are equal to it, Obama assured him. I see in you the same determination that motivated me, the same refusal to accept the status quo when the status quo fails your people. Anderson interjected, President Traoré, how do you carry on that legacy? With humility, Ibrahim replied, his voice still shaking with emotion. President Obama showed me that leadership is about serving something bigger than yourself. And he gave me the courage to believe that Africa can lead by example, not just follow others. Obama nodded approvingly. Ibrahim, you are already leading by example, and the whole world is paying attention. That gives me hope not just for Africa, but for the future of democratic leadership globally. Their connection had transcended politics to become something deeply human and inspiring. Obama decided to use this moment to convey a broader message about leadership and hope. Ibrahim, I want young Africans watching to know something important, he said, looking directly into the camera. You don't have to leave Africa to make a global impact. You can change the world by changing Africa. Ibrahim nodded vigorously, still visibly emotional. President Obama is right. For too long, African success was measured by how many could leave. Now we measure it by how many stay and build. Exactly, agreed Obama. And Ibrahim is proving that leaders who stay and build can have a greater global impact than those who leave. Anderson Cooper made an insightful observation. You are redefining what African success means. We are redefining what leadership means, period, said Obama. Ibrahim leads a country with a budget smaller than some American cities, but his methods of governance are being studied by much larger governments. It reminds me that size does not determine impact. Vision and execution determine impact. Ibrahim, regaining his composure but still emotional, added, President Obama taught me that you don't have to be perfect to make a difference. You have to be authentic and committed. And he showed me that true leadership leaves a legacy that continues long after you leave office. Obama smiled warmly. Ibrahim, your legacy is already being written. Young African leaders across the continent are following your example. You are creating a movement, not just leading individual countries. And that fills me with optimism about the future, not just of Africa, but of global democracy. Anderson observed, this conversation has transcended politics to become about hope and possibility. Because that's what real leadership does, Obama replied. It expands the horizon of what we consider possible. Ibrahim, teary-eyed, but smiling, said, Thank you, President Obama, for expanding my horizons about what we can achieve. When the show ended, emotional waves rippled through not only the two leaders, but a global audience. Social media exploded with clips of Ibrahim crying during Obama's remarks, but the comments were mostly admiring, not mocking. Ibrahim cries went viral, but with messages like, tears from a real leader seeing his work recognized. That's authentic leadership. Obama making Ibrahim cry with emotion is the most genuine moment I've seen in politics in years. In Burkina Faso, people watched with unprecedented national pride. Our president being recognized by Obama. Africa is rising, chants in the streets of Ouagadougou. Ibrahim has made us proud again. At the White House, even critics were moved. Regardless of political differences, this was a genuine moment of recognition between leaders, Republican aide said. Obama took diplomacy to a whole new level. American universities immediately began inviting Ibrahim to speak. "We want to understand how such a young leader developed wisdom that impressed a former president," Yale's president said. For Ibrahim personally, the impact was transformative. "Dr. Ouedraogo," he said the next day, "yesterday changed how I see our role in the world. We are not just a small country trying to survive. We are an example for others to follow." In Chicago, Obama reflected on the significance of the meeting. "Michelle, I have not felt such a deep connection with another leader since I left office," he said. "Ibrahim reminded me why I believed in politics in the first place." The Obama Foundation announced a formal partnership with Burkina Faso for a program to develop young African leaders. "President Traoré will be a key mentor," the statement said. "His approach to governance will be a model for the next generation." A week after the program, Time magazine devoted its cover to the Obama Traoré moment with the headline, "When Leaders Cry, the Humanity Behind Politics." The world had witnessed something rare, emotional authenticity between leaders that transcended borders and touched hearts globally. 6 months after the emotional encounter that touched the world, the impact of Ibrahim's tears continued to reverberate globally. Obama and Ibrahim had developed a deep friendship that transcended formal politics. Ibrahim was in Chicago as a special guest of the Obama Foundation to launch the Young African Leaders Initiative 2.0. During the event, Obama made emotional reference to the moment that brought them together. "6 months ago, I watched a young African leader cry, not in pain but in recognition," Obama told an audience of 500 young African leaders. Those tears represented something powerful, validation that Africa is writing its own success story. Ibrahim, now one of the most respected figures in the world, reflected on personal transformation. "President Obama taught me that vulnerability is strength, not weakness, that showing genuine emotion connects leaders with shared humanity." The Live Tearing program has become a case study in leadership schools on emotional authenticity. Ibrahim Traoré demonstrated that leaders can be simultaneously strong and sensitive, wrote a Harvard professor. His tears humanized politics in ways we rarely see. Burkina Faso had become a destination for students from around the world interested in the Traoré model of leadership. "We want to understand how leaders who cry on TV gain more respect, not less," explained a German student. The Obama-Traoré partnership had yielded tangible results. 47 young African leaders had been trained in the joint program, implementing similar reforms in 12 countries. "The ripple effect of Ibrahim's tears," Obama joked in an interview. "Authentic emotion inspired a continental movement." A year later, Ibrahim was speaking at the United Nations on emotional leadership in the 21st century. "President Obama taught me that we don't have to choose between competence and compassion," he said. "We can lead with both." In a final reflection, Obama said, "Ibrahim reminded me that politics, at its core, is about human connection. When we see leaders crying with gratitude for recognition, we remember that behind every office there are people trying to make a difference." Ibrahim's tears had become a symbol of a new era of leadership, authentic, emotional, and deeply human.